say that our own Woodrow Wilson was a great humanitarian who wrote 14 principles of peace to help end World War I. Yet promoted and featured in the White House, Birth of a Nation, a work derived from Norman Dixon's book, Klansman. This most likely is attributed to the notion that people of color were not human.
Everybody take one chorus. Let's see what happens. Let's play the melody twice, but everybody knows it. All right. And I want to be able to hear the violins. 1, 3, 1.
going to new interpretation here, we don't want it to be a top-down approach to presenting history and culture here. We wanted to involve community and get feedback about what matters most around this topic in particular of African American music and resistance, but also the types of stories that we should be investing in telling here at the Wilson House.
The idea is to instill in them that they can take their creative spirit. There are several examples of that through James Reese Europe's music, but a lot of folks, like you said, Marvin Gaye and Gil Scott-Heron, and on and on and on. Well, we want to expose these young people to that, and also, how do we break the generation gap? We break the generation gap by combining the generations. So tonight, we have taken from the workshop and from our rehearsals, and also from a little bit of my own impression of how I want to convey to them how they can convey to the world.
The first style will be the traditional ragtime, which I'll play solo piano. And the second time will be a style called New Orleans second line with the combo. Then the third style is classic DC go-go. And the piece is All of No Man's Land is Ours by James Reese Europe.
Oh, say, can't you see? Our Lady Liberty might cry if she were here in this 21st century. Was America ever great? Was it ever free of hate?
Jazz is kind of like a form of resistance, but it has a message behind it, you know. And I really enjoyed my time here.
Music's a way of bringing people together, and it's kind of a lot of the driving force behind a lot of movements is the music, and it holds everybody together. It gives people a message to follow behind.
I think if something is very important to you and it's something that's happening in the world or something that's happening in your community, you can really express it to others, whether that be a monologue, whether it be a poem, whether it be a song, and really get people to think. Because music, people can listen to music and they absorb it, and they can understand what you're trying to say, and then that will help them to maybe want to go out and change something.
We've made a tiny toehold here, and we need to make it permanent.
The history has to be brought into all spaces that's dealing with U.S. history. There's just no way it can be not talked about. What we're doing is highlighting the experience of African Americans at the time. It's about exposing a fuller history that obviously helps with a greater understanding of the person, of the man Wilson, but also a greater understanding, of course, of the country and the world at the time.
100 years ago, there were two men, William Monroe Trotter and President Woodrow Wilson, and they were associates. They had actually worked together a little bit. They knew each other from 1910, and each of them were independently in a fight for the principles that support peace. Wilson, with his 14 points of peace, and William Monroe Trotter for his 15th point of peace, which he proposed to Wilson to say, you know, the world will never have lasting peace unless we have this point of peace, which is to abolish all discriminatory racial policies. And Wilson denied that. He denied adding the 15th point to his 14th points of peace. And so the two stories the two men should have been able to work together on this, but William Trotter had to go forward and carry his 15th point in advocacy forward, and of course Wilson became very famous for his 14 points in peace and won a Nobel Peace Prize for part of it. But the story for William Monroe Trotter sort of got buried, and so of course at the Wilson House we thought, and at the National Trust for Historic Preservation, through the African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund with support from the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, we thought, what a better place than the Wilson House to revive and reactivate the 15th point and bring it to life, since it was essentially buried for these 100 years. What better way than music and resistance music of then and now, and what better way than through the performing arts here in an historic house than to bring these concepts to life. As well, what better way to connect with the young, emerging, promising generation of leaders, African American leaders and performers, than to connect them to the iconic legends of the past 100 years and the iconic legends of today in music and in African American leadership. Interpretation of history at the Wilson House has changed. The Wilson House has changed. And we think that we've helped to change how history is presented elsewhere.